Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. Today, we're gonna and we're gonna talk about some Russian history today. So buckle up your seatbelts and let's enjoy our little tour over to Russia. Still in Unit 5, still in Chapter 7. Nationalism. So yeah, let's get into it, people. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, so today we're talking Russia Reform and Reaction, Chapter 7, Section 5. So today is the last day of the unit. The last day before the last section of the chapter. So test tomorrow. Is it test tomorrow? I think so. So be that as it may, we got some stuff to cover. Okay, that was your warm-up. Okay. Objectives. So you'll be able to understand Russia's social structure and hierarchy, trace Russia's many efforts at reform and repression, and analyze the very beginnings of revolution under the Romanovs. All right, so where we at, though, in the world? Pretty much Russia, the largest country in the entire world, land masses abound. Okay, so this is Russia around this time. This is how big it is. So there's the European part, and then the Asia part, but it's Asian, all the same. All right, so rise up, Russia. So again, this all picks up after the fall of Napoleon. In 1815, Russia had not only been one of the largest and most populous countries in Europe, but also become a world power. In the 1600s, explorers had pushed eastward through Siberia to discover the lands east. PTG and CTG, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great. Hey, remember Catherine? So Peter the Great, Catherine the Great had added lands in the Baltic and Black Sea regions. And the Tsars, you're going to see this word, Tsars spelled TS or Tsars spelled CZ. And the Tsars of the 1800s had expanded into Central Asia, and Russia had become a large multinational state spanning from Europe to Asia throughout the 1800s. So Russian social structure, much like our French and Latin American social structures, Russia kind of the same, right? So I believe this is also a test question. So Peter the Great and Catherine the Great had tried to westernize Russia, meaning trying to bring industry capitalism to Russia. But it still remained economically underdeveloped, even though it was rich with natural resources. So a great obstacle to progress was due to Russia's rigid social structure. You had landowning nobles who dominated and rejected any reforms that endangered their privileges. Sounds like something we've learned about. Some country had this. The middle class was small and had little to no influence. Sounds like a little bourgeoisie. And the majority of the Russian population were serfs or laborers who were bound to the land and to the masters who controlled their fates. Kind of like I said, serfdom, when we talked about enlightened despotism and, enlightened despots ending serfdom. Serfdom is kind of like the European flavor of slavery without saying the word slavery. And these people are poor. All right, so like I said, Deez, Czars, or Czars. So you're going to see Czars whichever way, TS or CZ. You can spell it however way you want it. I don't care. I learned both. And I believe your book has CZ. In the book I had, I took my claim to fame about Russian history. I took a Russian history class in college. In our textbook, I believe has CZ. So either way is fine by me. Just to let you know, you have options. Although you don't have Czars, it's Czars. And look, what does Czars kind of look like? If you look at the CZ, you know, if Kaiser looked like Caesar, does that look like Caesar? If you guys know Roman history, Julius Caesar. So it's kind of like king in Russia. And they ruled with absolute power, and they opposed their will and their subjects. What I was trying to get to is you can't spell Czar CSAR or TZAR. It's CZTS. I don't know if I'll mark you down for not spelling it correctly on your test. So Czars made little limited attempts toward liberal reforms. Czars went back and forth on their words when they did not institute such reforms for fear of losing their support from nobles, because as we all know, the nobles have more money than the kings and queens in our time. And so if they lose support from nobles, even though they want to be progressive, the nobles be like, I don't like that. I'm taking my money elsewhere. I'm not going to support you anymore. That could cause a divide within the country, divisive issues between leaders. So, and the Enlightenment and French Revolution liberal policies had little to no effect on the Russian autocracy. Hey, there's that word autocracy, autocrat. This autocracy is usually associated with the Russian family leadership. All right, fast forward to 1855. So we have a different name to learn about because, hey, we've only learned about Louis and Georges and Philippes and Napoleons, and now Alexander. What a great name. So Alexander II had come to power during 1855 during the Crimean War. And there's going to be a cyclical reign of reform and repression like his grandpapa and his regular papa, Alexander I, Nicholas II. So your quiz question, there's an extra credit quiz question, is to put the Romanov leaders discussed in lecture in order of their reign. So if you have grandpapa, and that's the first time you're hearing him, that's probably the first person you're going to put down on your extra credit. So that is Alexander I. Then we have his son, Nicholas I. So Nicholas I's son is Alexander II. And the Crimean War was all about when Russia tried to take over Ottoman lands along the Danube River. Great Britain and France helped the Ottoman Turks by invading the Crimean Peninsula that sticks out from the Black Sea. And the war is going to end in horrible defeat for Russia. And it's going to display Russia's backwardness. And by backwardness, we mean not that they are literal backwards people, that they walk backwards. They're not up to speed, up to date with the times. Okay, they have few miles of railroads, RRs, and their military bureaucracy is inefficient. So even their hierarchy, their structure of the military is horrible. So here's a map of the Crimean War, and this is where Russia tried to, invade, and Crimea is right here, and there are battles. The Russian attack, so they try to take some lands up here, and Great Britain, France, they helped the Turks invade here. Battles, boom, boom. Constantinople, if you remember that from Roman history. So there's Alexander the First, nice sideburns. Nicholas the First, nice sideburns and mustache. Oh, Alexander, look at that mustache. Get with the times. Okay, serfdom to freedom. Liberals demanded the changes. Students will demonstrate seeking reform. Kind of like how we ended the years of 1848, right? This is around that time, and Russia starts to get some, liberal ideas inside the country and at universities. And so, as we've learned in history, students and workers usually are the main protagonists, the demonstrators. Okay, pressed from all sides, Alexander had to agree for reform. Again, it's that idea of reform and repression. Okay, this is the reform part, and now we're going to get into that. So in 1861, he issued the Emancipation of the Serfs. If you know anything about American history, there's another emancipation proclaimed in the year, I believe, 1863. However, serfs now, even though they're emancipated, free, they had to buy the land that they had worked, but many were too poor to do so. These lands ended up being too small to efficiently support a family. So these people, serfs, now just stayed poor. It's a turning point, though, because peasants moved to the cities to work in the factories and building of Russian factories for many Russian new industries coming to Russia because Industrial Revolution. And the freeing the serfs boosted the drive for further reform. So there's more reforms. This is a test question. Alexander's going to set up this details for setting up local government systems across the country. So elected assemblies called Zemstvas. Say that word, Zemstvas. All right, it's not Zemstvas, Zemstvas. And they were responsible for infrastructure. And if you don't know what infrastructure is to a country, that is roads, bridges, canals, places of like government city halls. Okay, I'm gonna say housing projects, maybe. So street lights, irrigation, sewage systems. That's infrastructure. And through this, these people will gain experience at self-government at a local level. Trial by jury, the ease of censorship, military service terms reduced, and brutal discipline was now limited. And now, the Romanov family in Russia are going to encourage the country to become industrialized when it heavily still relied on agriculture. So there's a revolution stirring. Alexander's reforms aren't going to satisfy many Russians. Peasants had freedom, but no land. Liberals wanted a constitution and elected legislature, but couldn't. And radicals who adopted socialist ideas from the West wanted more reform. And so the Tsar is going to move from reform times to repressive times. Socialists now are going to go spread the good word of socialism. However, peasants were too illiterate to understand, and socialism didn't really get its good start. So this is going to force radicals towards terrorism, and they assassinated Alexander II, March 13th, 1881. Bye, Felicia. This is Alexander II in his resting place. All right, so Alexander III cracks down. Now, if you were to be told, oh, there's Alexander I, there's Nicholas I, then there's Alexander II, you would have thought, oh, Nicholas II would be the next. No, Alexander II. And Alexander III, who is the son of Alexander II. So he responded to his father's assassination by bringing back the repressive and harsh methods of his grandfather, Nicholas I. Because, hey, you kill my daddy, I'm going to hurt you. It's only natural, right? So to wipe out liberals and revolutionaries, he increased the power of his secret police, and he restored strict censorship and exiled critics to Siberia. This is kind of the start of the KGB, if you know what that is. And he instituted the idea of Russification, which was aimed at suppressing the cultures of non-Russian peoples within the empire, and insisted upon one language, Russian, and one church, the Russian Orthodox Church. So this is like making racism, discrimination legal. If you're Jew, Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, all the other different religions that are in this big melting pot of Russia, now you can only speak Russian, or you have to learn Russian, and you can only praise one church, the Russian Orthodox Church. And this is under Alexander III. It's called Russification. All right, so Poles, Ukrainians, Finns, Armenians, Muslims, Jews, and many others are going to suffer persecution. It's kind of legal now. And that's Alexander III with a beard. Does not look like me. All right, industrialization. Finally. All right, so the country finally embraced industrialization under Alexander III and his son, Nicholas II. Nicholas II focused on the economic development of the 1890s. Okay, he built RRs, railroads, to connect iron and coal mines with factories and to transport goods across Russia. They secured foreign capital to invest in industry and transportation services such as the Trans-Siberian RR Railroad, which linked European Russia to the Pacific Ocean. And like always, industrialization will increase political and social problems, just like we've learned about for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks about the Industrial Revolution. All these problems, and they're going to be the same problems. Long hours, small wages, unsafe working conditions, unhealthy working conditions, poor living conditions, people being poor, not making enough money. So problems abound for the Romanov family. Do I talk about it? Oh, I don't talk about it. Oh, yes, I do talk about it. Okay, here is the Trans-Siberian RR Railroad. And if you notice, I believe this is the different time zones. There are 9 time zones in Russia. America has what? 4? 3? 4. No. Pacific, Central Standard, Eastern Standard. 3. 3. I can't think. Anyways, no, it's 4. Mountain time. Anyways, 4. They have 9. Get it straight. Okay, so and this is how long it would take back then. Taking a train to cross the country from the capital of Moscow to either Vladivostok, that's the port city that juts out onto the Pacific Ocean. That would be 9,000 kilometers, or 6 days, 15 hours, 20 minutes. That's a week. A week by train. Crazy, people, crazy. All right, and if you don't know, this Trans-Siberian Railroad is going to cause problems because Japan, being an island nation off the coast right here, I believe these are some Japanese islands. Japan is like over here off the map. Japan has claims to land, especially the port of Vladivostok. Okay, and so there's going to be a war between Japan and Russia, and it's called the Russo-Japanese War. And revolutionary ideas are going to be brought up again because Russia was sadly humiliated in defeat again. So revolutionary ideas come up again. Workers are going to go on strike, demanding shorter hours, better wages, something we haven't heard before. Liberals wanted a constitutional reforms to fix the government. Nothing like we haven't heard before. Same old, same old. And then you get a test question about Bloody Sunday. And Bloody Sunday is when this Orthodox priest organized a peasant march, January 22nd, 1905. And so they're going to march the streets of St. Petersburg to the Winter Palace of the Tsar. Fearing the mob, the royal family will leave, and he called his soldiers in to protect the palace. And if you've ever protested before, you know people's actions can cause some destruction, and with destruction comes some death. And if we've learned about the storming of the Bastille prison, we learned about the Boston Massacre. So in a sense, this is kind of the same thing. Okay, you hear it all the time. History doesn't repeat itself. History repeats itself, people. Sad to say, the cliche. So the soldiers line up around the outside of the palace as more and more people approach. Gunfire rang out, and men and women will flee. Extra credit question, those of you who are paying attention to this lecture. Extra credit is find out how many people died during the Bloody Sunday protest. Provide the link, email me your answers. Okay, and what Bloody Sunday did is it killed the people's faith and trust in the Tsar because, hey, they just wanted to talk it out with the Tsar, and the Tsar brings in the military, and the military kills the people. So that's just saying, you know, the Tsar is a coward. Bloody Sunday is a representation of what occurred. So 1905, following Bloody Sunday, discontent exploded across Russia. Strikes are going to multiply. Workers took over local governments in some cities. Peasants revolted and demanded change, demanded land in the countryside. This was almost a bit too much for Nicholas to handle. So he's going to issue reforms and sweeping reforms. Test question. One of them is going to be the October Manifesto, where he promised freedom of person, conscience, speech, assembly, and union. What does that sound like? I don't know. He also agreed to summon a Duma, Duma, or the elected national legislature. And no law would go into effect without the Duma's approval. What does that sound like? I can't think about it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Myth reforms. All right, so the manifesto immediately won over moderates and isolated some socialists. In 1906, the first Duma met, but the Tsar quickly dissolved it when the leaders criticized the government. Hey, if you can't take the heat, then get out the kitchen. You're the one who set this up. So when you hear about people, bad-mouthing you and your government, you're going to feel threatened, so you quickly dissolve it. Then the Tsar will appoint a new prime minister, Prime Minister Peter Stolypin. All right, and from this, appointment of Stolypin. He's gonna issue arrests, pogroms, which are another word for persecuting Jews in Russia. Pogroms, not programs, pogroms. I spelled that right. And executions will follow to regain order in the country. And then Stolypin is going to be like, hey, Russia don't need no repression. We need more reform. So Stolypin will pass moderate land reforms for peasants. He strengthened the zemstvas and education across the nation. Bars. But it was too limited to satisfy the rest of the country, and Stolypin was assassinated in 1911. And boy, was that a mistake. And so by the year 1914, Russia remained autocratic, simmering with unrest. And that concludes this lecture. So hopefully you guys did enjoy that. I always enjoy talking about Russian history, Soviet history, whatever you want to call it, the Russian Federation. So fun times. Anyways, your homework is to do page 251, 3 through 5. And yeah, if you like the lecture, slap that like button. Your test is coming up soon. It might be tomorrow. Anyways, hopefully you guys did enjoy. As always, stay safe, wash your hands,